The people who joined the Klan were not the unwashed and the ignorant. The people who joined the Klan were middle class, educated, many of them. In fact, there were lawyers and physicians and members of the Rotary Club and members of the City Council who joined the Ku Klux Klan in Indiana in 1923 and 1924.
On Thanksgiving Eve, 1915, Colonel William J. Simmons and 15 others climbed Stone Mountain in Atlanta, Georgia. At the top, Simmons lit fire to a wooden cross, proclaiming the rebirth of the Ku Klux Klan and the beginning of a new era. Simmons was heavily inspired by Birth of a Nation, a film depicting a society torn apart by previously enslaved African Americans and restored to order by the KKK. The film fed off nativist sentiment and romantic nostalgia for the Old South, creating a dangerous environment as buried ideologies from the 1870s resurfaced. Using these racist sentiments, the Second Coming of the Klan would produce unmatched participation, put members in state government, create its own police force, and rule politics in Indiana and the Midwest. The group seemed unstoppable. But in 1925, Madge Oberholtzer took on the responsibility of recording a deathbed testimony against KKK leader D.C. Stephenson, bringing down the Indiana Klan and protecting the rights of women and minorities. For the first KKK, the primary focus was African Americans. This time around, though, the Klan played into anti-immigrant sentiments stemming from World War I and mass arrivals from Europe.
The Klan was about Christianity and about Protestantism. It was about 100% Americans, no blacks, no Jews, no Catholics.
As hatred towards these groups swelled, so did the KKK. One man saw a prime opportunity to capitalize on this massive growth and renewed hatred. His name was David Curtis, or D.C. Stephenson. Stephenson was charismatic and confident, qualities that quickly propelled him up KKK ranks. He was given control over recruitment in Indiana and quickly identified that the real way to win over the state was to present the organization as family-centered by setting up membership for women and children. He also played into the prevalence of Protestantism of the time, bribing ministers to speak highly of the Klan to churchgoers. Stephenson's innovative methods attracted over 250,000 Hoosiers, causing national leader Hiram Evans to take notice. On July 4, 1923, in Kokomo, Indiana, Stephenson was crowned Grand Dragon by Evans in front of a crowd of over 200,000 Klan members. As part of this promotion, he was given control of recruitment in several new states. Underneath the facade of family centrism, the KKK was still a brutal organization that used violence and lynchings to deprive minorities of their fundamental rights. But minority groups fought back against the Klan. At the national level, the NAACP worked to convince Calvin Coolidge to fulfill his presidential responsibilities by protecting the rights of all his citizens. In Indiana, Notre Dame students came together to protest a KKK rally, and the newspaper Tolerance exposed the names of Klan members. However, this backfired as the KKK became less secretive and more socially accepted. Even with growing opposition, the KKK continued to run politics in Indiana, Stephenson pulling strings behind the scenes. The Grand Dragon bribed and blackmailed state officials in pursuit of an ultimate goal, taking his organization to the White House. In private, Stephenson was a notorious drinker and womanizer. His long history of sexual assault and domestic abuse starkly contrasted the Klan ideals he preached to the public. But with his true persona kept tightly under wraps, the KKK continued its political success, culminating in the 1924 election when Klan member Ed Jackson won the governor's seat and many others were voted into the state Congress. With political power over the entire state and membership continuing to grow, the Klan seemed unstoppable. But soon, one woman would send the empire tumbling down. Madge Oberholtzer grew up in Irvington, just a few blocks away from Stephenson's Indianapolis home. She loved her community, participating in charity events throughout her childhood and with the Pi Beta Phi sorority during her time at Butler University. After Butler, she used her position as the manager of the Youth People Reading Circle to improve literacy in Indy. Madge was bright and extremely independent. With money saved up from her job, she bought herself a brand new Ford Model T and could be seen driving it around town. She even took a road trip from Irvington out to California with a close friend, a rare activity for a woman of the time. In early 1925, active as ever in her community, Madge helped plan an inauguration party for the new governor, Ed Jackson. As thanks, a friend procured a ticket to the party for her, even seating her across from the most powerful man in the state, D.C. Stephenson. The two danced together, and Stephenson began to pursue Madge, relentlessly asking her out until she said yes. They went on only a few dates. Unfortunately, Stephenson was not yet done with her. March 15, 1925, Stephenson called Madge, saying he was leaving for Chicago and needed to see her. When she arrived at his residence, Stephenson forced her to join him and his bodyguards on their trip. Throughout the course of the following train ride, Stephenson repeatedly assaulted and raped Madge, inflicting serious wounds. When they arrived at their destination, Madge took mercury tablets to end her suffering, feeling extremely hopeless. But Stephenson discovered what she had done, and enraged, said he would only take her to a hospital if she agreed to be his wife. Knowing this would eliminate her right to speak out against him, Madge bravely refused, and Stephenson loaded her into a car and refused to stop until they reached Indianapolis again. He dropped her off at the Oberholtzer home, not wanting to deal with the potential consequences of her dying under his supervision. Madge was in terrible condition from the abduction when Stephenson left her, and her parents and the family physician, Dr. Kingsbury, anxiously tended to her bedside. In terrible grief and preparing for the worst, Madge's father turned to his attorney, Asa J. Smith, saying, "Bring legal action, sue if you think best. I place it all in your hands." Knowing he would need monumental evidence to bring against Stephenson, Smith began to prepare a case. He approached Madge with the idea of a deathbed statement, and knowing the impact it could have, she agreed. For the next few days, she persisted through terrible pain to give Smith the entire story. Madge's condition continued to decline, and on April 14, 1925, she died in her family home, her parents at her side. She was only 28. Mourners flocked to the Oberholtzer home for a funeral service, where the community honored the woman Madge had been. She was truly a girl of the time, fiercely independent, passionate, and spirited. With Madge's death confirmed, the trial began in earnest. Held in the Noblesville courthouse, with a jury of white male farmers, things seemed to be tipping dangerously in Stephenson's favor. But Smith and the prosecution made a compelling case. Kingsbury and autopsy reports had found that the final cause of death was not Madge's suicide attempt, but infection of wounds inflicted by Stephenson and a delay of treatment. Additionally, women the Grand Dragon had previously assaulted came forward and spoke out against him, inspired by Madge's bravery. The jury convened and found D.C. Stephenson guilty of second-degree murder, sentencing him to life in prison. With this decision, the jury fulfilled their important responsibility of ensuring a fair, honest trial. The fallout of the trial was immense, as Klan members around the state realized they had been tricked by Stephenson. The facade of a family-centered KKK was quickly shattered as his crimes came to light, and within a few years, membership in Indiana dropped from 250,000 to approximately 4,000. But it was not only Indiana that was affected.
This story and this trial was covered across the country in all the newspapers. It was even covered overseas in newspapers. They sent newspapermen from Chicago, like the Chicago Tribune came down to cover the trial. And so I think it was one of the first things, it's kind of the equivalent of something going viral on the internet now. It was along those lines about how much it spread throughout the news across the country.
The entire organization saw Stephenson's crimes, and many members took the responsibility to leave the KKK and its undemocratic ideals behind. Instrumental in the Klan's fall was a quote from Madge's testimony, something Stephenson had told her during the abduction: "I am the law." When published alongside trial reports, the abuses of power he had taken became evident, and people came to realize how far his denial of many people's rights had gone. In 1927, the fate of the Klan was truly sealed. Stephenson had been counting on a pardon from Ed Jackson in exchange for key assistance in the election, but because of Stephenson's plummeting popularity, the pardon never came. As retribution, Stephenson leaked names of Klan-backed government officials and information of bribes they had taken to major Indiana newspapers. Most notable in this case was the Indianapolis Times, who received a Pulitzer Prize for their work. With First Amendment rights of freedom of the press, there was nothing Jackson or other officials could do. A series of arrests, including Jackson, for corruption followed, clearing out the Indiana government of Klan members. The Klan has never been able to form a major voting bloc again since the trial, and as a result, key legislation protecting minorities such as the Voting Rights Act of 1965 have been passed. The fight for equality continues for many Americans, but such legislation has been a major step in the right direction. Additionally, Madge's legacy continues today as her trial is studied in law schools across the country, helping inform students on the rights of the deceased to have their voices heard in court. Madge Oberholtzer knew that her testimony could backfire. If she had lived and the trial had been lost, the Klan would have been merciless. But by taking on the responsibility of speaking out, Madge found her justice and ensured Stephenson would never deny anyone else their fundamental rights again.